So to my left, to my left, I have Mr. Butch. Yeah, Butch Evanson. So Butch and I are actually friends. Well, I don't know. He'll call me a friend. I'll call him a friend. We actually play golf quite a bit together in our community, and Butch is the CEO of a hospital. So I think his perspective is going to be very valuable to us. And then some of you know that I know Mr. Cannon fairly well, and we've been working together quite a bit. And Steve's got an enormous amount of history in terms of our industry and different perspectives around the service aspect. So, and unfortunately, Ms. Wanda Legate was supposed to be here with us as well, but she's had a personal situation. So our thoughts and prayers go out with her. But I think these guys will bring a lot of wonderful perspective to us in terms of our industry and what's going on. And I think the value from my perspective with these guys here is helping us, including you guys, see where we're at, what's going on, and how we might glean from their thoughts in terms of what we might do different. And so with that, I'm going to allow each one to introduce themselves a little bit in terms of their history and what they're bringing up before we get into some specific questions. Butch.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So Butch Evanson, CEO for Trinity Regional Hospital in Saxe. So I've been in healthcare for about 22 years, I guess at this point. Past 10 years have been spent as either CFO, COO, or CEO of various hospitals and health systems. So Trinity is actually a greenfield new project. So we are under construction and scheduled to open next June, and pretty exciting. And so Dave and I've actually had a lot of great interaction and conversations over the past couple of weeks and months about equipment and strategies and various things about how we want to incorporate that into this hospital. And this is kind of our template hospital. We want to develop this and to be able to put this out throughout the country. So how do we take this and grow this? So it's been some pretty good, great insights from his standpoint to help me. So
thank you, sir. Mr. Cannon.
My name is Steve Cannon. I've been in this industry probably longer than some of you are old. So 40 plus years.
Make sure you're on. No, so make sure you're on. Hold on. No, hold on. There you go.
I wasn't supposed to do anything.
Yeah. Well,
this is supposed to be easy.
it's listen, technical, right? You got biomed in the house? Oh, that's good.
I'm not a biomed. But anyway, been in the industry for over 40 years. I've had the pleasure of actually working with some of you in this industry during that period of time. And I'm not a biomed tech. I'm not an imaging engineer. I'm an old X-ray tech. Is how I got my started. Medic in the military, came out and became an X-ray technologist. But I've been blessed. I've had the opportunity to work for almost any organization you could think of in healthcare. I've worked on the clinical side, and I've been the director of radiology, director of cardiovascular labs, so forth and so on. So on the patient care side. I've also had the opportunity to work for a GPO. I've worked for 3 global service companies, being Sodexo, Aramark, and Althea most recently. I've had the opportunity to work for a private equity group, which was an interesting experience in and of itself. And then I worked for an OEM, Philips Healthcare, for 2.5 years. So again, it's been an interesting journey. I actually retired, believe it or not, in October of last year. But somebody asked me, said, you were retired about 2 days. I said, nah, not even 2 days. So I met Tom Needhammer and Brian Gibbs, my partners. We formed HTG, and now I'm back in it. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad you haven't retired yet. So anyways, I want to thank the group that are on we have 30 plus people on the line. And so thanks them for joining, and hopefully they can ask questions online if we get a chance, and we can ask them as well. So other than that, I guess what I want to do is just remind everybody that what we're hoping to do, and the reason why these gentlemen were picked specifically, is when we ask the questions, that we want to kind of relate it to our field and how it might be seen through their eyes in terms of what they're dealing with as a C-suite individual in a healthcare institute, because that's everything we're always wanting to know. And I'm so pleased and I'm so excited about the fact that Butch is here, because we're always wondering, what is the C-suite thinking? What are we going to do to get to them? Well, hopefully we'll get some insight into that. And Steve's experience in terms of the history and background is going to be invaluable. So only for the purposes so that might help them in terms of the way they slant some of their stuff. How many are in-house here? How many are come from the in-house side? All right, well, that's good, good. And then, so then the rest are probably ISO or third party. Any manufacturers in here? Okay, great. All right, well, so you guys got a sense, whatever. We'll go from there. All right, so let's start with the first question. I'm going to ask a question, get it kicked off, but if you guys have a question that you want to, it's just burning and you got to have it, let me know. We'll make sure we get it asked. To start with, all right, so gentlemen, from your perspectives, how do you see healthcare changing at a high level, and what do you think will be the impact to the HTM community? Carrie, you want to go ahead? You go first.
Yeah. So I'll jump in. So again, having been in this now for 20 plus years, probably from my perspective, what I've seen the greatest impact from the hospital is how procedures are performed, right? So 15 years ago, if you went in for a cardiac cath, you more than likely had an inpatient stay. Now all of those are done outpatient, and so what we're seeing is more and more and more being done outpatient. And the reason why is because technology has gotten so much better, the equipment has gotten so much better, the care. And so I think what we're going to continue to see is technology play a tremendous role in how procedures are performed. So whether that's robotics, whether that's AI, whatever it may be, I think we're going to see that continue to grow and more. So for us, from a hospital standpoint, more procedures being performed outpatient with a very heavy reliance on the technology to achieve that.
Okay, great. I actually have, I'm going to ask some specifics around that, but I'll let Mr. Cannon answer first.
All right. Well, I think that we will continue to see consolidation in healthcare. Consolidation at the hospital level, large systems becoming larger. And I think along with that, those that are in-house, you're going to be expected to do more with less, right? Given the way this industry is going, I'm speaking specifically the HTM industry, right? There are not a lot of new upcoming technical resources we have available to, right? How many schools are closing, Dave?
27 in the last 2 years.
27 schools closed in the last 2 years. So I think and that's why I say you got to learn how to do more with less. And by the way, that's a slogan at the Innovation Institute, which owns our company now. So you got to learn how to do more with less, right? But I think just an overall challenge from that standpoint, availability of technical resources, greater consolidations. But I think at the same time, the rural critical access hospitals, the smaller hospitals will have a role to play in this healthcare system. You're going to see the GPOs. Remember I said I was part of a GPO at one time. That GPO went through a consolidation of 3 GPOs back in the mid-90s. You're going to continue to see that. Some of the GPOs that are out there today, Premier, Vizient, Intellier, and others, they're simply going to get larger. And they're going to get larger through consolidation. And I think there's been an announcement recently where Vizient acquired Intellier, or is going to acquire Intellier by the end of the first quarter of 2021. So GPOs are going to continue to play a role in healthcare. I think from a HTM standpoint, the technology, as Butch said, the technology is going to continue to evolve. And it's up to us to figure out how we play a role in that, right? And we need to be playing a role from the very beginning, which starts with the evaluation of technology, the acquisition of that technology, the maintenance of that technology, and then finally the disposition of that technology at the end of its useful life.
So now I got a question for you too, but I'll start back with Butch.
Okay.
So Butch,
You can't ask questions. You're going to continue.
Yeah, you just settle down. I can do anything I want. I got the beer. So Butch, you made some great points, and obviously everyone in this room understands technology is going to be a huge impact on and everything in general. And there's nothing today there's not a single piece of equipment today that doesn't interface with an IT device in some form or fashion. One of the things that I can just tell you, I'm asking for myself, and maybe others can, through nodding heads, say whether or not it'd be interesting to you, but you talk about how the stay for the patients in the healthcare is shrinking in this and that. How much of that is driven by DRGs?
So you have to understand, so inpatients are paid by DRG, outpatients are paid by APC. And so, what we've seen happen is CMS, Medicare, the coding guidelines, all that is going on and on, saying, okay, these are outpatient only procedures. And so when you get put on an outpatient only procedure, that means that's the only way it will be paid. And that's where you've seen that shift. I use cardiology a lot because it's just impactful. And to me, it's amazing how you go in one day and you go back home the same day and have a stent and okay, that's it. So it's not, the DRG is only inpatient, APC for outpatient.
So I guess maybe I should ask the question in a different way. So I guess the value would be as a progressive HTM program would be have a seat at the table in a manner of speaking of understanding how reimbursements for inpatient versus elective or outpatient surgeries are going to be impacted, because it sounds like healthcare organizations will migrate in those directions. And if we understand that, we can be a valuable partner at the seat at the table in terms of figuring out how to do that.
Absolutely. And the whole, and I'm sure all you guys that are in-house, you've heard it over and over, and even, the outsource centers, you've heard how reimbursements continue to shrink. And that's how they're doing it. They're saying, okay, that 3-day length of stay, no more, it's got to be an overnight stay. And so how do we contain those costs? And so is that through technology? Okay, so how do we do that through technology? And on the flip side, you have more and more technology coming out every day. Like I said, we're a greenfield hospital, so brand new. And so I'm having to have the unfortunate pleasure of going through and having to help pick and select all these various pieces of equipment. One of the things was beds. So we're looking at our hospital inpatient beds, and I get a quote from one vendor, and I mean, this thing does everything except for breathe for the patient. It takes vitals from the bed. It does all these amazing things, but I don't get paid any more for using that bed versus a traditional bed from 5 years ago. And so I think that's the real thing we have to challenge ourselves and understand is how do we continue to contain costs, because reimbursements continue to shrink at the same time pushing technology forward.
So my takeaway, I can't speak for everybody in the room, my takeaway is that if I can align myself more with the administration corridor and understand what the direction they want to go in, we can bring a valuable asset in terms of helping you figure out what equipment is going to help you achieve that at the rate and price that you want from a stay and a length of stay and all that stuff. So
it's all about what's necessary.
Right.
So I need you to come to me and say, Butch, that's an amazing bed, but do we really need it to do all of that? Because technology will continue to change.
awesome. So Mr. Cannon, going back to your comments, big question for me is, so I agree with everything you just said, but can you give us one specific example in terms of what you envision would be a little bit different in terms of our making changes in light of, the things that you mentioned?
Well, I think the in-house programs or third-party companies have to continue to evolve and change given the dynamics in the healthcare environment today. I mean, if you look at cybersecurity, you look at hospital-acquired infections, readmission rates, you look at artificial intelligence, what's going to be your role in those areas going forward, right? You read almost on a daily basis of some cybersecurity event, right? I read an article recently where GE's equipment is coming into question around cybersecurity. And I don't know why GE specifically, but it was saying that the GE equipment is at more risk from a cybersecurity attack than the other manufacturers. But as an in-house program or third-party organization, how are you going to play in those areas? What's your role in cybersecurity? What's your role in artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence around the operation of the equipment, right? And what's going to be your role in hospital-acquired infections?
Cool. Thank you, sir. Questions from anybody else? Any clarity around any of that? Okay. So let me go to the next one. Next one I've got is, it's around COVID, but honestly, I would say just anything in terms of this, right? Any kind of pandemic, any kind of a, national type disaster like this. So are you doing anything different today because of it? Is your business being impacted? And Butch, that might not be a fair question, but overall, just maybe what you know about knowledge in healthcare in general. But so what's being impacted because of COVID? And as we hopefully anticipate it starting to come down now, what will be changes that you'll make based on lessons learned and or with the idea that we're going to get back to normal at some point?
Yeah, so I actually feel like I'm a little bit lucky because we don't open until June. So we're able to kind of step back and see what everybody has done over the past 6 to 8 months and say, okay, we need to make sure we implement this. All of the ORs will have the UV lights to turn on at night. So anything we can do, the HVAC system will have the extra filters and all those different things that may have had to be retrofitted for a lot of other facilities. We're able to kind of say, okay, we need to go ahead and do that on the front end. So I think we're a little fortunate from that perspective. I think also kind of the trend that I've seen, I think Steve's right. I mean, there's been a tremendous amount of consolidation and gobbling up by the bigger health systems and the bigger hospitals, and you've seen a lot of smaller hospitals close because of that. I really think we're going to see a trend the other way. I think you're going to start seeing smaller hospitals start to flourish a little bit more, just because as a patient, I don't particularly want to go to the 1,000-bed hospital ER, right? If I'm sick, that's or if I'm going to have surgery, that's not necessarily where I want to go because of my fear of the pandemic. Or I just hear a lot of that. I think a lot of people are more comfortable in a smaller setting where they feel like they've got a little more control over who's there. I think I'm hearing that a lot from physicians, surgeons. Surgeons don't really want their patients going there. They want to be in a much more controlled and smaller setting. So I think those are the impacts that I've seen over the past 6 to 8 months for us.
Okay, I'm getting old. I have to write my notes down or I can't. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They started putting in clinical targets so that the CVS and stuff like that sort. So the convenient care everywhere you're at has definitely grown. Even our clinics have grown full-blown mini centers right before the hospital.
Right.
Extremely true.
Yeah.
One question I did have being built, so new med surg area expansion, right? This was our pandemic. And obviously we did notice this change in construction timeline. Did that affect yours?
Actually, construction timeline has not been impacted at all, other than the wonderful Texas rain in the spring. So other than that, we've had no impact. Material cost, I will say, has been slightly higher, but from a timing perspective, I didn't see any difference in timing.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah. So if you're going to ask a question, just speak up so that we can either hear you or I can repeat the question. So great, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, from a COVID standpoint, I think Dave's optimistic around, and I always say, hope is not a strategy. You need to have a plan. So the plan now is the vaccinations, right? So, we don't really know how long COVID is going to extend. I've had the opportunity over the past few months to work with Tom and Brian and starting this new company. But during that process, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of service organizations, right? And it goes from one extreme to the other in terms of how COVID has impacted those companies. And you hear everything from furloughing employees, right? You hear about reducing salaries because sales are not what they should be, to the other extreme, where hospitals, because of COVID and because of the focus on COVID and a lot of their outlying facilities, they've shut them down. So they're not using a lot of the outlying clinics and medical office buildings and so forth. But that's an opportunity for some of these service organizations, because now these hospitals are looking and saying, okay, now's probably the prime time for me to start looking at renovating those spaces, right? Looking at the equipment and bringing in new equipment. So I've seen over the last probably 8 to 10 months, the negative side of it, but also the positive side of it.
Yeah, so Butch, going back to your perspective, I tend to agree with you that not just because patients necessarily don't want to be in a 1,000-bed hospital because there's greater risk for hospital-acquired infections and they don't get the care and attention that they're looking for, but I do think that things are going to shift towards smaller entities and off-site surgery centers and off-site radiology centers. And so from where I see that a paradigm shift for us in terms of, as an HTM professional, we're not necessarily going to have the life that we've always had, which is we build a team, we put them in the hospital in the basement near the morgue, and then we just run upstairs when we can, grab something, come down, fix it, and bring it back. I think we're going to have to be more of what I call spoken hub concept. So as best as you can, either one of you guys, both of you guys, do you envision us having to make changes in that way? And what does that look like for you? And what's important that we make sure that we don't miss out on as we make these changes?
Yeah, so I think so. I think again, what you're seeing is more and more decentralization. You're seeing decreases in beds. You're seeing typically a lot of that, and people trying to become more focused. So that's been the advent of the surgical hospital, right? So you've got surgical hospital with 20 beds and not doing much else, and so all the imaging that's done somewhere else, or lab work is done somewhere else, or whatever. So yeah, I think just understanding the facilities strategy and being in on that on the front end will help you understand how you need to plan for that and be ready.
Steve?
Yeah, I would just say, we've talked a lot about the smaller hospitals and where they've been in the past and how the overall healthcare environment has affected them from a negative standpoint. Some have closed, right? But again, I see a proliferation of those types of facilities in the future. So as service organizations, if you're talking about a 50-bed hospital or less as a point of access, critical access care hospital, how do we as an organization serve those hospitals, right? Some of you may have outreach programs, right, where you serve those types of facilities now, but they're going to play an important role in healthcare delivery in the future.
Dave?
We went from under 100 people like having virtual health visits to over 7,000 in 1 month. With the virtual health visits, my wife and I both had virtual doctor's visits. Earlier this year, I was in just a regular screening, and I found out that I had another health problem that I didn't even know about. If I wouldn't have been in the doctor's office, I would have never been as a virtual visit, probably would have never been discovered. With that, I wonder, is there going to be an opportunity in medical equipment or some kind of like kit that's sent out, or some kind of thing that ties into your phone, or to virtually diagnose people that have virtual health visits? Because I think virtual health visits are going to be maybe more of a thing in the future than like actually going into a doctor's office and doing that. So I wonder, is there vital sign monitors, pulse ox, I don't know, like whatever you might think may be coming.
So
Do you think they heard the question? No? So you do or they don't? You think? All right, so basically Dave, who's out of Colorado, he's asking, what are we going to do from an HTM perspective? And do we think that equipment in particular is going to be geared toward virtual home health visits, home screenings, if you will? And so, he's asking these guys, what do they think in terms of how we're going to support the home health virtual realities or virtual things? So
yeah, well, yeah, 100%. So I'd be willing to bet more than one person has an Apple Watch in here, right? So 5 years ago, you could look and see how far you ran, and you could check a few things, and that's evolved. And so I'm wearing a Whoop, and I don't know if you know what Whoop is, but Whoop basically, but the thing with Apple, you have to take it off every night to charge it. So this one you never take off. You put a battery pack on it every couple of days, and so it's monitoring my resting heart rate, it's monitoring my respiratory, so I think you'll see wearable tech, to your point of being monitors or whatever, continue to evolve to give us data that's connected in with your EMR. So whether that's Epic or Meditech or Cerner or whatever, so whatever that may be, I think that is definitely going to happen, where wearable technology continues to integrate in with the EMR, so that preemptively they can say, we're seeing issues in your cardiac rhythm or your respiratory, you need to come in and see the doc. I totally agree with that.
I would agree with Butch. I mean, our lives are virtual now, right? There's a few opportunities for us to go into a healthcare facility. It doesn't matter whether it's a hospital or, because of COVID, or to a physician's office. And I've done both. I've done the virtual visit, right? I thought it went okay, but I always like to go get that actual on-site visit, right? I want to talk to the doctor, I want to be right there, I want to look at his reactions and those kind of things. So I think it's going to be a combination of both in the future, right? And particularly as we become an aging population, right? All the baby boomers now, are me included, are getting to that point where healthcare is becoming more important. So we need access to it. I think a lot of it will be virtual, but I think you also have the opportunity to go get that annual physical in the future.
So Dave, I'm just going to speak from my own perspective. So what I would say is that that's, in some ways, you're exactly speaking to what we're talking about, right? So by definition of medical device, monitor, diagnose, and treat a patient. Well, what you just described is a piece of equipment that monitors, diagnoses, and potentially treats a patient. So that's all equipment that we're going to be responsible for. So the day of the biomed tech having a toolkit or DVM or whatever else that they got that they run up to fix equipment, that's no longer going to be the case. And the biomed tech that's sitting down in the basement waiting for the call is no longer going to be the case. We're going to be doing home health care. We're going to be partnering with the home health care agencies to do the job that we do today. And it's going to be more in a road fashion than it will be in the basement of a hospital. To me, you're exemplifying the point we're trying to make here. And so, yes, and again, if you think you're going to get out of it, you certainly will, but you won't be in the healthcare industry, I guarantee it, because that's where it's going. If we don't evolve, we're going to get left behind. That's my 2 cents.
With the virtual visits, they're trying to open up a whole new industry almost.
Right. Agree. I mean, so the comment is that the virtual is going to, open up new industries, but I agree with you. I think that's what it is. It's right. It's those of us that are good enough, quick enough to get on the bandwagon and become part of that is going to be profitable and going to be part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem.
Yeah, Dave, if I could, the only thing I would add to that is, the traditional days of service where you take your multimeter and you go diagnose a piece of equipment up, everything's becoming connected, right? And if you're talking about equipment that's being in the patient's home or the person's home and the connectivity through the cloud or however that happens, I think you as service organizations are going to have to become more familiar with that whole process, right? Because that's going to be part of the troubleshooting process. For some reason, it's not sending my data to the doctor now. What's wrong, right? And it's going through the cloud.
So moving on to the next thing, which is going to actually kind of feed right into this. So you can't answer because you were in my class. Anybody else who's in the class at all, you can't answer. Anybody know how many people are in this industry from our side, the HTM side, includes the OEMs, ISOs, and third parties? Yeah, I keep giving you guys the answers and not fair. Well, go ahead and say it. How many? 50,000 people do what we do. Okay. In the next 3 to 4 years, 20% will retire. So we're looking at about somewhere between 8 and 10,000 will be retiring. And today, 27 schools have closed within the last 2 years. On average, we're going to have 1,500 to 2,000 people leaving. By the way, these are all people that have been in it for 30, 40, 50 years that have all that knowledge and expertise are leaving, and they're taking that with them. We're bringing in some new people. By the way, with the closure of 27 schools, on average, between 200 to 300 people are coming into this industry a year. We're going to have a shortage pretty quick. And if we don't change the way we're doing business, as technology and the way we're delivering healthcare changes, we're going to be upside down pretty fast, pretty quick. And as hospitals, I don't care if you're an HDO, ISO, or OEM, if you don't get on board and figure out how that's going to be, you will never be able to provide that service. There won't be enough people to deliver the service the way we're delivering it today. I'm telling you straight up. Okay, I'll get off my bandwagon. So having all said that, what are you guys going to do about it? What are we going to do to help us? What are we doing to be prepared for that? What is it you're going to need so that we can help us to be successful?
Well, so I can't really speak to, how you can change the industry. I can kind of speak to, as a hospital executive, what am I looking for, and what are my needs, and maybe what am I seeing in some of the other areas, and that is, maybe it's become more diversified. So that's meaning, you've got, for me as a hospital, I want one point of contact, cradle to grave, for all of my equipment. So that's someone telling me, Butch, this is what you need versus what you want. So you need this. I can take care of it. I can help dispose of it and replace it when you need to get rid of it. And that's where I think being able to share those resources across multiple facilities, I think will be important. Just having that single point of contact for me is critical. So I'm not trying to call 10 different people to do one thing.
Great.
Yeah, I would tell you that, for me, I try to separate in 3 categories, right? One is the clinical engineering management roles, right? And there's still colleges out there and clinical engineering, degrees and so forth. So I'm not so concerned about the clinical engineering management positions. It's more around the technical positions, both imaging and biomed, right? We've known for a long time, there are not a lot of schools out there that produce imaging engineers. There've been a lot of schools producing biomed techs, and those are declining, as Dave said. In our past, mine and Dave's past, we've actually partnered with local community colleges and established programs around medical imaging engineers, right? ECPI College of Technology is an example. We also have been strong advocates and supporters of, new startup biomedical training companies. And I think we all have to own it, and we all start one step at a time, right? Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves looking behind us and nobody's there to help us execute on our service. So I think creating programs, and I know some of you in this facility today, you do that, right? In your current business, you're offering training to engineers and to biomed techs, and whether it be entry-level training or it be advanced training. But you got to do more of it, right? But I would also say, as a social responsibility to the communities where you live and to the schools that are trying to create those programs, we have a responsibility to help support those.
So Butch, I want to follow up with a comment you made, because in all candor, as I sit here and listen, what you're saying is exactly what the people in this room need to hear, right? You're the C-suite, you're up there, you're focusing on how you're going to get more lives to cover. You're focusing on how you're going to get reimbursement. You're looking at your competition, to decide what services you're going to offer so you can stay viable. That's where your world is. And the last thing you want to worry about is the fact that your CT or MRI or whatever is down. So you talked about how you want somebody that can be your one-stop shop. So for us to do that, we need to have a relationship with people at your level. What skills do you think we need to have, and what's the methodology or the way that we should go about trying to bridge that gap to get that level of communication so we can start to build that rapport so that we can give you what you need? Because a lot of people in this room are challenged with having those kind of conversations or understanding the skills that they need to be able to do that.
Sure. And, obviously it's, the interpersonal skills, that goes without saying, just being able to communicate, but then what are you communicating? And again, that's why I said, I want someone to tell me what I need versus what I want. I go back to the beds. That was an awesome bed. It would do, like I said, did everything for you, but do I really need that? And so having someone tell me and help me navigate medical equipment and technology and say, Butch, this is what we need. This is going to save you money, and this is the way we do it. Or I'm okay with someone telling me we need to spend money, but justify it. Why do I need to spend this extra $10, $50, $100,000 on this piece of equipment? Well, it's going to save lives. It's going to reduce infections. Show the data. So I think showing the empirical data on why you're suggesting those things, I think those are the important things to get across to administration, your point of view.
So this isn't fair, but I'm gonna go ahead and put you on the spot anyways.
Oh, geez.
I'll hear about it later.
I know.
So,
Can I get a beer for now?
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's just, you're just speaking for yourself because everybody would be different, but what tool would be the best for you? You want an Excel spreadsheet? You want a PowerPoint? You want a Word document? I mean, what do you want me to take you to one of the facilities and show you how it works?
No.
Or competitive? What does that look like for you?
No. Well, so this is not a fair question. I'm a CPA, so I love Excel. So, yeah, so Excel, I don't need to see the equipment. That's your world. That's where you tell me, my CNO is going to tell me. No, I want to see the data. I want to see the numbers. And again, if it's reducing cost, if it's again, it's not always about reducing cost. I know we talk about that a lot. I'm sure you all hear that if you work with an administrator or a CFO or whatever. You got to cut costs. Yeah, you do. But at the same time, there is times when you have to spend money to save money, and that means you're reducing length of stay. You're doing the right thing for the patient, and I'm okay with that if I've got the data that says, Butch, this is the right thing for this for patient population. You need to spend this money. I'm okay with that.
So I would just give you my 2 cents for those of us in the room is What I just heard him say is using an Excel, because at the end of the day, he's going to run it by his CFO no matter what, because his emotional vote isn't going to carry the CFO's vote. But the reality of it is go give them the data that they need to get what they need so they can make a good decision. I always say it's not our job to decide what to get. It's our job to help them decide what to get by giving them data to make that decision. So, yes, sir, Dave.
There's a warrant officer in the military. And he said, whenever he goes to the colonel, he said, he doesn't want to be seen as the problem person. He wants to be seen as the solution person. So when he goes to the colonel, he has a problem. If he has a problem, he goes to the colonel. But he said he has at least 2 solutions to that problem. So that because he goes to the colonel and asks him, what do you think? He said, here's one of my suggestions. Right. Here's another suggestion. What do you think back to the colonel or the CEO? What do you think?
Yeah, no, again, don't ever just come say, hey, the MRI's down. Come say, hey, the MRI's down. I've contacted somebody, or this is the issue. I mean, 100%, because I'm not going to be able to tell you, well, this is what we need to do. I'm going to look to the subject matter expert to say, this is what we need to do. And like having multiple solutions is always better.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to be honest with you, if it gets to the CEO that a piece of equipment's down, we've probably got a bigger problem anyways. Yeah, long ways before it gets to that person.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm just,
Right.
Agreed. Great comment. All right, next one. What do I got here? All right, so we're going to get into an area that you may or may not have thoughts towards, but as you may or may not know, the FDA has got some stuff going on in terms of our industry. The OEMs are basically saying that we're not capable of being able to provide high quality, safe, and effective servicing of medical equipment. And so since February of 2016, they've had a huge initiative to work out whether or not we can or can't do it. At the same time, there's a parallel initiative going on from state by state. 15 states today literally are in the Supreme Court in terms of trying to figure out right to repair. And so we could make a whole day out of this in terms of what does that mean. But I guess let's start with what are your 2 initial thoughts related to those things. And then I'm sure there'll be subsequent questions out of that. So.
Yeah, so my only comment would be, again, I'm the kind of person I want one call, right? I want one person to be able to contact to help me navigate through whatever the issue may be. And if that now comes to, I've got 15 different people I've got to call, that's where it's inefficient for me as a hospital administrator.
I'm sure you got a lot of comments with this.
Well, I mean, you really are the expert to speak on the FDA initiative, but, you know, having been in this business 40 plus years, this has always been a challenge, right? And I don't see it changing anytime soon. So, you know, having the ability to, at the client's request, be able to fix the equipment, have the right documentation, the right software, and so forth, right? So from an FDA standpoint, I don't know, Dave, it may go on another 4 years before that's really resolved. And it was really all driven around patient safety, right? That was how it was positioned with the FDA, that patient safety is compromised when service is being done by a non-OEM. Now, hear that, non-OEM. That could be a third party, it could be in-house group, right? It's not just limited to third parties. So I think we'll continue to banter back and forth that whole issue around, you know, what we have to do in order to make sure that we're not perceived as a threat to patient safety, right? Now, from a right to repair standpoint, first off, let me be clear. I don't have a problem having to comply to an international quality standard, right? If that's what it takes to accomplish the right to repair. I don't care whether you're an OEM, OEMs now do multi-vendor service, whether it's an in-house group or whether it's a third party. If the issue really is around quality, right? I don't have a problem in complying with some quality standard, whether it's ISO 9001, ISO 13485, whatever it is. And I think at some point in time, there'll probably be that direction from the FDA. But with that said, I think the owner of the equipment, Butch, should be able to choose who he wants to serve his equipment. And to his point, he wants one organization for everything. In my world, that'd be one throat to choke, but yes, he wants one organization, right? And I think he, as the owner of that equipment, should be able to make that decision. And when he makes that decision, then his service organization, whomever he chooses, should have access to the proper documentation, the proper software to do it correctly and to do it in a timely manner, right? That's my perspective, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much expected the answers out of both. Yeah, I guess from our perspective, and I'll speak on behalf of you guys and kick in with me as you see fit, but I think that in both your cases, you, Butch, from a consumer's perspective, I think it's important that if you have an opportunity to speak to your governor, your senator, whatever, and let them know that I'm not speaking as if, look, I want to make sure I can do what you need. To Steve's point, you want to be able to have a choice. You may decide you want to go with the OEM. That's your prerogative.
Right.
You may decide you want to build an in-house program. You may decide you want a third party. It should be your choice. It shouldn't be your direction. And so the voices need to be heard, and it's going to be people like you in particular that are going to make that happen. Steve, from your perspective, it's going to be a similar situation. I mean, you know, you're respected in the industry and carry a lot of clout. It's going to be the opportunity to speak to various people to help them understand that we're not trying to say that we're better than an OEM. What we're trying to say is we're as good as, and that it's an option that people ought to be able to have, and that they shouldn't have to be edicted to make a decision.
Agreed.
Thoughts, comments, concerns?
I think what Steve said, you know, it would not serve us well to fight against the concept of being compared. What serves well is do what we need to do to guarantee that we're showing that. Like I totally agree with you. We should not fight against, you know, certification if that's necessary, or stepping up and showing, because here's the truth. The truth is there's no basis behind their assertions that we're going to say. They can't come up with data. I know Dave is a member of this committee. They can't come up with, it's a theory, you know, and it's based in a financial bias. That's true. The worst thing we can do, and even in the light of Bush watching us, would be to fight against, you know, just the concept or the theory, and I was like, you know what, and there are some ways that we're doing this. When it first came out, I was shaking because it sounded like they were agreeing with manufacturers. But what a lot of people, some people saying, like, bring it on. But that's this is fine, bring it on. It's a good thing. You know, look at us, let's fight it. We do that. Their biases being applied against us right now is unjust. So you have to have information in that sense. Don't get lost in that and not fight the right way. You're saying, so, yeah, do this. Our corporations do nice and it's easy. No, it's not. It's going to be very it's going to be very difficult. You can roll out to your average tech. You know, that eventually have to do with these. They have to stay on top of the policies and procedures and the follow up that you have to have as a set up. But you know, as a leader of the company, moving into this program, I was a little bit stressed out. Top people were doing something I really like, they might put it in this. Then I moved through it. I really feel good about where I'm at. I think that, as you said, that will probably come down to having sufficient, you know, saying, okay, we've done that. I don't know what the in-house equivalent would be. I don't think it's necessary necessarily for in-house program to be like nice and 9,001. But I think we look at leadership from any or something like that, maybe there's something that we can do. But I was just overall review this is a lot. I think we should run towards, you know, getting ahead of it and move right things down. Because it does happen. There is a, you know, we sit down in front of the doctor and say, you know, we want to there, we want to see from the so-and-so, we're working on it. I mean, that does grab an emotion, right? For us to get ahead of this, it's not easy. We're valuing our professionals that are on the spot where we need to be, and then we have a relationship with healthcare provider. I mean, that's important. That's important.
Yeah, there's a second part to that. So let me go back to if we're required to comply to a common quality standard, I think it should be applied to any service provider, right? Whether it's in-house, OEM, or third party. The other part of that is it does take time, energy, resources, and there's a cost to becoming ISO certified. For those of you that I've worked with at All Parts Medical, we went through it, 13485, right? And the way I positioned it with our team was, it's pretty simple. You document what you do, then you do what you document. That's what the quality standard is really about. But on the other side of that is the reporting, right? That goes back to the FDA and to the OEMs and so forth. So I'm not opposed to reporting, as long as they would make that reporting process easy and seamless for the service organization, right? It can't be cumbersome. It can't add additional cost to our healthcare system today. So quality standard and reporting, I'm okay with that, right?
So I'll just, I know a little bit about what's going on, and I would just say this. Likely, it will not be edict that we have to do a 13485 or a 9001 or an EQ56 or any of the other QMS systems that are out there. What likely is going to happen is there'll be a group of us that will come up with the tenets that are relevant to demonstration, safe, quality, and effective servicing of medical equipment. And then you'll be asked, just like a Joint Commission deemed survey from CMS, to demonstrate that you're hearing or hitting on those tenets of a QMS. Because what they're concerned about is if they edict one or another, it would leave certain things out. It wouldn't include everything. It would take away the variability and the entrepreneurship that we all love to express, as well as it could be costly and prohibitive from certain organizations to adhere to. So I'm very excited with the position in the FDA is taken at this point, with the idea that we're going to get to where we want to get to, which drives for what we're looking for. So cool. Other comments to that? All right, well, my last one for you guys is understanding where we're at, where we're going from your perspectives. What advice can you give us so we can be more successful in the future?
You know, again, just speaking from the administrator's chair, just communication with your peers, communication with, never within the organization, and I'm talking, from a hospital and even your own, but never create silos. Those are bad for anybody, but they're really, really bad in healthcare. So continue to communicate, learn to communicate, work with your peers and work with administration, because you're a valued asset, and it's going to continue to become, in my opinion, more valuable in the future as we see technology becoming even more prevalent than it is today.
Yeah, and I think Butch is absolutely correct, and Dave will echo this. For me, communication is paramount, right? And I don't care whether it's verbal communication or whether it's written communication. You have to be clear, concise, to the point, because CEOs don't have a whole lot of time to read stuff, right? But I think communication is simply a reflection of you, particularly your written communication. If you've never met someone, you send them a letter and it's poorly written, they form an opinion of you right then, right? So my mother said I should have been an English teacher, but I wasn't. So.
Trust me, he ain't lying.
But I will tell you, based on my 40 years in this business, I think it's important to be flexible. You have to be flexible to adapt, because healthcare is going to continue to change. It's all changed now because of COVID, right? But COVID is not the last pandemic you will ever see. There will be others. So what do we learn from this pandemic that we can be prepared to try to address some of these challenges in the future? I would also say surround yourself with good people, and that's going to be harder to do because there are fewer people coming into the industry, right? And I've been blessed, again, to have the opportunity to work with a very, very talented group of people, Dave Franklin being one of those, and now Brian and Tom in the back, and Jennifer back in the very back. And so you surround yourself with good people. That's how you're successful. And I will also tell you one other thing that a manager of mine told me one time about the characteristic of a good leader. A good leader has quiet confidence wrapped in a blanket of humility. You don't have to tell people how good you are. And it's always important to remain humble. Quiet confidence wrapped in a blanket of humility. Got it? All right.
He's been saying that for a while. So Butch, one last question for you, as you said what you just said. So, and it's just your perspective, I get it. Somebody of your peer would be entirely different, but you're not likely going to be the one that we're going to be able to sit with and have a normal conversation with on a regular basis. So are you going to look to your CNO or your CFO, or what person are you going to look to that you feel that we will have that relationship with, that you're going to look to get the information, just so these guys have a sense of what that might look like? And it may be different under different circumstances, but from your perspective.
Yeah, so it's going to be the blend of both, right? So I mean, so you're going to be working with the CNO typically from a clinical standpoint, patient safety. But then when it comes to the dollars and cents, you're working with the CFO. So I think it's a blend of both. So you have the fortunate, I'll call it fortunate, fortunate task of being able to speak not only clinical quality, but also dollars and cents. And what does that mean from an economic standpoint?
Well, that's pretty much it where we're at. You guys have any last minute questions? Yes, sir.
Looked it up and said, there's 3 of us certified, you want to do dollars, there's none of you. We walked out the meeting and said, well, they're right. Within 6 months, 6 of us are certified. Next year we had a meeting, well, there's 6. Part of that was, we started a staff team with our hospital administration, where our professionalism was, unfortunately, the question never, it has to come from people like me, and I must on several people why everything we needed, this guy's 5 years. And that helps us as a profession, because, since we're trying to recruit people with it, those initials, you need something, people.
So I'm going to answer that because these guys probably can't. Don't influence this. So the reality is this. This is my perspective, having dealt with all the stuff that I've been dealing with. Believe it or not, that was one of the initial responses to the FDA thing back in February 2016. Look, we'll just make everybody certified, and that'll solve our problem because that'll guarantee safety and quality. And all of you guys, I'll just say this out. Tell me that you don't know a certified individual that not necessarily is the highest quality or the safest person, right? So no disrespect, but we have done ourselves a disservice as an industry because we're not mandated to be certified or regulated in some form or fashion. At the same token, for us to now go ahead and initiate that and mandate it to happen would be a major problem from 2 perspectives. Sorry, yeah, but if you don't mandate it, we're going to be right where we are today. People aren't going to do it just because they don't want to do it, right? I mean, and so we've been saying 35 years, you should be certified. You should be certified. I resisted for the first couple of years that I was in the industry. And then I did it not because I wanted to prove that I was any better than anybody else. It was because it would open more doors for me. I did it for my own benefit. But the reality of it is that as an industry, and I had this conversation earlier, if we don't start figuring out a way to break down the walls and communicate amongst ourselves and stop holding back information and all on the auspices of differentiation, we are going to be in trouble because the OEMs don't have this platform. They work together because they don't have the threat of, oh my God, I'm going to get outsourced. HDOs, healthcare delivery organizations, if you don't know what that means, it's a fairly relatively new term. In-house groups, now called HDOs, they don't want to be outsourced, and so they keep their stuff very close to the vest. And people don't know what they're doing, and it can be perceived as they're not knowing or understanding what's going on, and they don't have the highest level of safety or quality. Not to say they don't, but it's perceived because they're not sharing information. ISOs, all they want to do is make money. And so they're not doing anything for safety or quality, and so it's becoming a problem. And the OEMs, all they care about is market share. And so the problem is, as an industry, it has been at least the 35 years that I've been in it, is we're hurting ourselves because of, and we're hurting it under the umbrella of intellectual property and differentiation. And if we don't start breaking down those barriers, it's never going to fly. And in terms of certification, I support it. In our organization, we pay for it. We give you a pay increase when you get it, but you have to want to do it on your own. And I don't think it'll ever be a mandate or a requirement because of that. And if it did, with the amount of fewer people coming in that we're having, and all the situation is, we'd kill this organization 100% completely. Yeah. What needs to happen is the newer classes coming in need to just make that part of the curriculum, right? Is you have to get certified as part of curriculum, and it wouldn't be an issue going forward. So, but the problem is we also don't have people coming in. So, it becomes an issue. Dave? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So Dave from Colorado again is talking about the AAMI pre-certification, if you will, the stepping stone in terms to get to the next certification. So, all right. Other thoughts, comments? We did pretty good. You guys said, oh, we got a question over here.
What keeps you up at night?
Good question. Good question. It's his golf game.
Everything. Yeah, except for my golf game because I routinely beat Dave. Everything. So we have to hire roughly 100 people in the next 3 months. We have to go procure, install, and get all of the equipment ready. We don't even have the building yet. So everything keeps me up at night. But you surround yourself. I think Steve said, you surround yourself with good people, right? And so that's been my first task, is surrounding myself with good people. I have an amazing CNO, I have an amazing CFO, and my HR director is coming on board. So I'm starting to build the team. And as you build that team, so whether that's this or in your own organization, when you build that right team, it makes things so much easier. And I think that's going to help me sleep a little bit better in January.
So
If I could just address that also, and everyone in this room plays an important role in that, what he said about he's got to recruit all these people. And you talk about the clinical staff, the nurses and the nursing assistants and so forth. You not only want to attract them, you want to retain them. And everything that you do has an impact on patient care. We don't deliver direct patient care, do we? But everything we do has a direct impact on patient care. But not only an impact on patient care, it has an impact on clinical staff satisfaction. If the nurse can get what she needs when she needs it and it works, it'll make her job, her life, or his life a lot easier. So I think it's also the role that we play in that whole process.
Agreed. Good comment. Okay, so on behalf of the MDX, we want to really appreciate you guys hanging out and participating in this. Just fantastic. So thank you. And I really want to give these guys a real warm applause because I think they helped us out tremendously. So thank you very much, guys.
My pleasure.